Dependence used to be a dirty word in developmental psychology. The idea was that in order to mature, we would move from a state of dependence as children to a state of independence as adults. There were stages that one progressed through as we grew that helped one become more independent. Stages such as autistic, symbiotic, differentiation, practicing, the reapproachment stage, and eventually by about 24 to 36 months, the consolidation and object constancy stage, where we are comfortable separating from the mother because we have internalized a representation of her that can soothe us when we are upset, thereby self-soothing, and we have the confidence as children that she will be there when needed. If someone was unable to successfully traverse these stages, then they might grow to be what we now call codependent, or in family systems terms, enmeshed, meaning that a person might rely a great deal on their partner to provide reassurance for nurturing and love to the extent it blurs healthy boundaries and a reliance on the enabler. There is even models of couples therapy that use this developmental approach and apply it to couples. Now, I don't want to be overly critical and throw out the baby with the bathwater here. These types of developmental models that saw maturity as a separation from dependence to independence were rooted in the best science of the day, and they were developed by really smart and talented researchers. But with that being said, we now have better science that leads us to different and better conclusions about what makes someone mature and the process through which they grow into maturity. That science is called attachment. And clinically, as well as in my own relationship, there is something that all couples have to learn how to negotiate, how to balance the need for closeness and intimacy and the need for autonomy and independence. So that is what we're going to talk about today, how to strike the balance between dependence and independence in love. Let's get started.
Welcome to Trauma-Free Relationship, a podcast that provides support and guidance to help heal the wounds of attachment trauma. Whether you find yourself struggling with unresolved issues in the past or have experienced trauma in your current relationship, our goal is to provide accurate, scientifically informed information as well as the tools to help you create a secure connection between you and your partner. And here's your host, Tom Philp.
You may have heard this term attachment before. It has certainly been talked about enough in the psychological literature as well as in popular culture. There are now whole methods on helping us attach. Everything from parenting books, adolescence, whole family systems, and of course, couples that use the attachment lens as a way to describe development and growth from the cradle to the grave. What we now understand is this: when we are given the right kind of care as children, when the caretaker is able to repair ruptures, when they're able to attune at least 30% of the time to the child, when they are providing a loving, nurturing environment from which the child is able to learn and grow, then a secure attachment is formed. This security enables the child and eventually the adult to do the following things. 1, they are comfortable with closeness and intimacy and are able to share their vulnerabilities with others. 2, they are able to regulate their emotions better and handle stress better. And 3, they are not scared of independence or autonomy in themselves or others. Now, there are other benefits to secure attachment, but for the purposes of this particular podcast, I wanted to just hone in on those 3. Now, essentially, the child that has secure attachment becomes the adult that has a positive view of themselves, meaning they do not need constant reassurance to feel valued or worthy of love. And they have a positive view of others, meaning they are more trusting of their partner and do not feel jealous or doubt their partner's intentions. Now, in this podcast, I wanted to focus more on how secure attachment creates healthy dependence and independence in relationships. But at this point, it's not hard to imagine that if a child does not get the security they need, then they learn to adapt to those unrepaired ruptures that impacts the adult's view of themselves and others, meaning they may not trust others or their intentions as much. They may cling to their partners because they need constant reassurance of being worthy of love. Or they may move away from their partner for fear that intimacy will destroy their autonomy and independence. My point here is this: we do not grow from a point of dependence to a point of independence and call that maturity. We are always dependent on our attachment figures, and that is a good thing. One of the benefits of a secure attachment style is that it provides the flexibility to be comfortable with closeness and independence. The securely attached adult can ask for space when they need it, and they can ask for closeness when they desire it, trusting that their partner will respond to their needs. This will allow them to create and sustain relationships that ultimately imbue their life with meaning and purpose. And what I see clinically, oftentimes with those who are insecurely attached, meaning whether they're anxious or avoidant, is it's more difficult for them to get to their attachment need and ask for that to be met. One of the hallmarks of progress in couples therapy with my couples is when the couple has some kind of rupture at home, but somehow during that rupture, the anxious person is able to say, I just need some reassurance that you still love and value me. I was trying to create a connection with you. And the avoidant is able to say, I just felt overwhelmed in the moment and I needed some space. I felt like my autonomy was sort of being crushed in that moment. That is a huge marker in the insecurely attached person's life, to be able to express the need behind the protection and the defenses that show up oftentimes in relationships that create these cycles. And so often what I see with the insecurely attached is that they struggle to be able to identify those needs and to communicate those needs to their partner. Now, I could really get on my soapbox here about how in North American culture, especially here in the United States, we overvalue independence, but that may be for another podcast. So let me just say this in conclusion, that learning to balance the need for closeness and the need for independence is something that all relationships deal with. Whether you're in a securely attached relationship or somehow you find yourself in an insecurely attached relationship and find yourself getting caught in more trauma cycles, either way, this is something that is constantly having to be negotiated at different points in time in the relationship. One of the things I see that I'm reminded of John Gottman's research is that there are certain issues that are just unresolvable in relationships. I think the figure was about 63 to 67%, meaning that we're never going to completely resolve this need for independence versus closeness, autonomy versus independence in our relationship. That as our relationships grow and wax and wane and have high points and low points, we constantly have to renegotiate this as we are growing as well in our relationships as individuals. So whether it's growth together or growth as individuals, the need for this closeness and the need for autonomy never completely gets resolved and goes away. We have to be able to ask for what we need in those moments. And I think that's the great struggle sometimes, is that we sort of expect our partner just to get it, to understand, when we often are expecting them to read our minds. And we have to move out of that mindset. We cannot expect our partner to read our minds. We have to be able to communicate the deeper need that we have. So, in conclusion, learning to balance the need for closeness and the need for independence is something that all relationships have to deal with, as I've said. And of course, what makes it difficult is if you have past trauma created by unrepaired ruptures, then you may need more work in learning to feel safe with closeness and intimacy, or learning to feel safe with distance and independence in your partner. And I'll let you tune in to my other podcast. I have one on avoidant attachment and one on anxious attachment, where I talk about ways to sort of tackle these developmental opportunities in yourself, these growth opportunities. And I'll let you tune into those. I didn't want to make this podcast too long to listen to, but those offer some great tips and tricks and tools and things that you can do to really sort of gain more understanding and insight about how each one of those insecure attachment styles impacts your relationship and things you can do to begin to grow in those areas. But for now, it's important to know that we are constantly having to battle in our relationships the need for closeness and the need for autonomy and independence. And that's something that's never completely resolvable and never completely goes away. But I think the trick to learning how to balance that is, one, flexibility, being able to feel okay and safe with either intimacy and closeness or distance and autonomy, and also being able to ask for our needs to be met with our partner. Hey, as always, I hope you found this helpful. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you like, don't like, would want to hear more of. And as always, we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to Trauma Free Relationship, a podcast for the healing of attachment trauma. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website at traumafreerelationship.com. Be sure to look for our next episode on your favorite streaming service.